Hello my beautiful creative souls and welcome back for today's video. It's been a little bit. I'm in my new space and I'm very excited to be filming this video. Today I want to do the hashtag Standout Decks of 2023. This is a hashtag created by Cosmic Creeper, I believe her name is. I will leave the video linked below, but I thought that this was a great idea. It's like an easy way to do a kind of deck roundup for the year without getting too lost down the rabbit hole, especially for me because I use all of my decks all the time, and I did acquire quite a few new decks this year. So yeah, I've picked 5 decks to share with you as my kind of standout decks of the year, and then 2 honorable mentions. I picked decks that I didn't like recently acquire. I wanted to pick ones that I had had for several months at least. Can't help but shuffle. I'm sure you understand. So without further ado, we'll just kick off with the obvious. This is the Haunted House Tarot. And this was 1000% a standout deck for me in 2023. I purchased this in 2022 in the fall and didn't really connect with it right away, but somewhere closer to the winter season I did, and then it went on my altar and never left. And you'll see kind of a theme running through a lot of my decks that I picked for standout decks this year, because this year in my spiritual practice, I really focused on inner work, really figuring out, things that aligned with my path, connecting back to kind of my natural, earthy, wild woman power, I guess you could say, while also exploring the realm of connecting with guides and deities and exploring things like that. And while none of those concepts were like new to me, I really kind of focused in on that and really just like the heart of what it means to be a witch who's connected to kind of the unseen realms and the forces of nature and all those things. So this deck I used a lot on my altar for deity work and communing with guides. I worked a lot with Lilith. I worked a lot with Lilith this year, and she was definitely kind of one of the main deities that really spoke to me through this deck. And I felt like she's kind of moved on a little bit, and I don't pull this deck out nearly as much in the past month or so as I had earlier. I think just shifting and things, but it's still on my altar. I still use it. I love this deck. I love the imagery. I love that you're in the haunted house and you have the different like characters. You have witches and angels and demons, and I always forget what the 4th one is, but you also follow like the protagonist, and there's just some really like different takes on some of the cards while still adhering to like the Rider-Waite Smith. There's so much story and world building that's woven into this particular deck, and I really enjoy it. A lot of people are worried. I've gotten comments because I show this deck all the time. A lot of people who purchase this deck are worried that the cardstock is not going to hold up, and I gotta be honest, I freaking love this cardstock. It's small enough for me to shuffle. It's super flexible. You can see on the deck, like around the edges, where it's worn, because I have literally like daily riffled, overhand, like handled it, shuffled. You can also see, I don't know if it'll pick it up on camera, but some of like where the coating is worn off, so it's like a little dull in some places just from like wear. But in terms of the actual like cardstock, like as you can see, Like, it's still perfectly usable. There's nothing wrong with it. I have not edged this. I don't edge many of my decks, but I have not been like, I'm not overly aggressive with my decks, but I don't baby them either. So if you're worried about it like not holding up, in my experience, at least the copy I have, it'll hold up perfectly. So that was a very long rant about Tarot of the Haunted House, kind of my main squeeze altar deck for the year. Another deck that was super impactful for me this year, another tarot deck, it was the White Newman Tarot, and again, another one that I raved about a lot this year. I have 3 cards on the top because I'm currently hosting a ritual experience, and these are kind of pulled out for that, but this deck, it's funny, both of these decks don't give you a lot in terms of the guidebook. This deck and then the one I showed you last. They have little white books. They do have like their own theme and story though, that's very strongly woven. The White Newman deck you have to decode a little bit more for yourself, but there's something so elemental and nature based about this deck. You very much feel like the 4 elements within it. I love how everyone feels very like mystically connected, and all the time you have like this woman standing in water and she's like clearly like having some sort of psychic channeling experience. She's got the familiar birds around her. Like, there's something so mystical and yet grounded about this deck that I can't quite put my finger on, but it's so supportive, especially I found for those times within liminal space or transitions, or when you feel really ungrounded, like you have a lot freaking going on and you just want to sit there and like shuffle and ask question after question after question after question. Does anybody else get that way? Just me? I found that this deck was really perfect for that. And I was a little worried, not gonna lie, because I used this deck on the daily. Like, I did a huge deep dive with this deck, and for about 2 months it was like the only deck that I was really using for tarot, which is not an experience I usually have. And then I put it away and I didn't feel called to pull it out, and I was kind of worried because I was like, well, was that it? Like, is our time over? Is our magic done? And then this month, after my little kind of Tarot of the Haunted House went on a little hiatus, this one came back out, and she's been working with me and working with me on some of the programs I'm developing, and she came out for some year ahead readings for clients. So I'm very happy to be working with this one again, and this was definitely a standout deck for me in 2023. Again, this is the White Newman Tarot. All links will be below. I edged mine in a metallic marker, and I have, of course, individual videos on both of these decks that you can watch if you want to dive a little deeper, but definitely a standout deck for the year. So the next deck is another tarot deck. I have an oracle on this list, I promise. I actually have 2, but this deck is one of those decks that, like, I got it because I like randomly saw it, and then it was I think it was on sale for like $17 on Amazon. So I was like, hell yes. I got this in the spring, maybe in the winter. It was either in the winter or spring. This is a deck, it's super weird. It's hella chunky. The cardstock is super stiff. I have broken mine in quite a bit because I chunked it down and did the shuffling. When you first get it, you can't bend it at all like that, but you can break it in. The backs leave a lot to be desired, but I freaking love this deck. I edged mine in blue to kind of bridge the front and the rest of the deck. But this is such a fun deck, and one that I definitely actually recommend for beginners because of the guidebook. It is short, but really great. Each of the major arcana cards is associated with a particular god, goddess, or mythological figure. There are some ones that I was familiar with. Baba Yaga's in here, Lilith's in here. Names blanking on all the other ones, but you know, there's some familiar faces. The three sisters, the Fates, are in here. And then there were some other ones. Oh, this is it starts with an S, escaping me. But anyway, each major arcana is associated with a story of myth, Hecate, or the moon. And there's a little blurb about their story, why that pertains to the card. And then each card has an upright and reversed meaning. And it's just, they have a way of really hitting on the major theme of the card in a really easily digestible way that I feel is not so like glaringly boring like some of the other decks. So great guidebook. Anyway, I fucking love this deck. I love the colors in it. I love that you feel like you're in this entirely other world. I think you'll see this as a theme in these three decks particularly, but you're very much in line with RWS, but you're in another world, and it's very, again, elemental. You have like blurred lines, like things are like squishy and melting, and it reminds me of Mr. Pickles, that show. If you're someone who gets easily offended, do not watch that show. But it's quite enjoyable. I think it's quite dark, but quite enjoyable if you like kind of those silly dark adult cartoons. But I don't know, it's playful, it's mystical, the lines are very blurred, it has deeper hidden meanings, but also has that ability to, like, look at the bleeding eyes. I don't know if it's focusing. Look at the bleeding eyes on the chair. I don't know, it's my dark Scorpio sense of humor, I guess. But yeah, it's very versatile, it's very fun, it's bright, it's lighthearted, it's deep, it's a complex deck with a lot of issues, but it was really a standout deck for me in 2023, and one that I just was able to use and felt like I was having a different experience. Like, you know, when you don't really need, like, you don't need that deep mystical experience. You really just want to have some fun with the deck, but you don't want it to be so lighthearted. You still want a little bit of like mystery to it. That's the Ask the Witch Tarot. Again, like I said, the cardstock is horrendous. The backs are, I don't even know. They don't kind of match the vibe of the rest of the deck, but, and I can only shuffle it like this because it's so big and my hands are so tiny, but I don't even care. I really enjoyed this deck in 2023. It's so funny. We have Lilith on the bottom. Apparently she really enjoyed this deck as well. So that was Ask the Witch Tarot. Next, let's talk about an oracle before we talk about our final tarot and a couple honorable mentions. So this is the Witching Hour Oracle, Awaken Your Inner Magic. This one I got more towards the end of 2023, but you guys, this is by Lorraine Anderson, who was the same creator that was doing the Seasons of the Witch deck. And you may or may not recall, if you've been around for a while, my absolute upset that was the newest, not even the newest, because I have not bought the newest, because I'm so upset about this. But anyway, long story short, the Seasons of the Witch Mabon oracle. They did away with the poems on the bottom and reformatted the guidebook, and they just really watered it down, and it made me really upset. So when I saw that the same author did this deck as well, the Witching Hour Oracle, I was like, all right, we need to give this a try. And it comes with these yellow edges, which is pretty cool, not gonna lie. I'm really impressed by this. Like, this redeemed, like, it made me feel better about the Seasons of the Witch series. I'm still salty about it. I'm still heartbroken. But you can definitely see where this author was able to kind of do her own thing with this deck, and it wasn't so dampened, if that makes any sense. So this deck is very intentional. It's based on the author's journey through kind of a dark night of the soul kind of journey. That was how I interpreted it. And each card came from, I'm sorry, I'm wiggling the table. I'm still getting used to the new setup. Each card is kind of a peg along that journey. So, well, there's keywords and the divination message, which is very lengthy and like meaty, which I appreciate. But then she also has threads woven together. So there's a section called Tarot Companions where she associates some of the oracle cards with certain tarot cards, which I loved because in my brain I automatically do that. Like, I will pull out things like, you know, an oracle card and be like, oh, that reminds me of the world, or that reminds me of this archetype. So I thought that was really cool. And then she also has companion cards. So if you pull out certain combination cards, so this one says knowing, so this is the first card. She's saying if you pull out the High Priestess, the Invitation, or the Enter at Your Own Risk card, then that's what these cards mean together. They're like special combinations to pay attention to. And there's different exercises in here, not for every card, but for some of them there are like corresponding rituals or invitations. So really standout deck in terms of like the conception and the execution of the guidebook. Really enjoyed that. I really enjoy how this deck reads. The cardstock's good. I mean, it's rock pool, so it's decent. It holds up. It's like a gloss. It's not glossy, but it's not matte. I don't know what you call that. It's not satin. The different messages in here are really cool. I love that you get like, this is a cup of tea, right? So you get the visual of the tea, you get the spider, you get the herbs, you get the witch's brew, right? You feel that witch's brew, but then it says seek alternative solutions. And I love that there's like a dual meaning with that, right? It's like there's so many places you can go with that. And then of course she has, you know, more things in the guidebook, but secret trail, ascension, enter at your own risk, pause, High Priestess as leadership. I love that one. Forest, seeing the bigger picture. There's also 2 transition cards in this deck, which I really appreciate. If you're on any type of spiritual journey, dark night of the soul, transformation, walking a spiritual path, I highly recommend this deck. Not gonna lie, the artwork is not my usual cup of tea. I have very specific tastes. I love hyper realistic things that blend in with like a mystical world. For instance, I love like this particular card, but there are other ones that are really like misses for me. Like, I really am not a fan of this particular card. This is there's no bad art, right? There's just all personal preference. So I think that the artist did a beautiful job executing the idea of the cards. This one has been interesting that I get a lot, which I find I don't have it. Hanging Bones, seeing the signs. It's just, it's mystical, it's witchy, it's shadow themed, it's cosmic connected themed. It's introverted singular witch path themed. I mean, it's just very, it's a very well executed deck. And again, not one that I'm not putting these up on my altar as like cards I want to look at over and over again, but as a practical, like, everyday use and for bigger themes, this is a great deck. It's worked really well in client readings. I've used it in my own personal work a lot. Definitely a standout deck of the year. Final official standout deck of the year. This one has nudity. I think some of the other ones I should have had nudity, but this one is like, just, you've been warned. This is the Witch's Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. This has been out for quite a while. I did a trade earlier in the year for the Major Arcana version only of this deck, and instantly fell in love. I've been using these cards on my altar since I got them, and I backed this creator's new Oracle deck in October, I think. And this was like, you could get the full size version of this deck as an add-on for big discounts, so I did, and I have zero regrets. I know I said I wasn't going to include decks that I hadn't had for a long time, but because I had the Major Arcana deck for longer, I felt that I could put this deck on this list. This is the only card that I do not like, and it's because the thing on her head freaks me out, and I don't understand how this translates into the Four of Wands at all. Anyway, other than that singular card, and possibly a few other ones, I fucking love this deck. It's photography based. It's, again, hyper realistic because they're real photographs. It's mystical. There are additional cards, so as you see, like, there's Hecate, there's the moon phases in here. There are a few other kind of deities, and Maiden Mother Crone. This is, it delivers on what it says it is. Like, this is the Witch's Tarot. And there's so much to work with here. You have to be really connected to imagery and to be able to intuitively gain insight from cards. This guidebook is non-existent, basically. The guidebook is just a photo with 3 keywords for upright and 3 keywords for reversed, and that's it. So really all of what you get out of this deck comes from doing the work with the deck. But it's just, it's so raw. It's so, again, that liminal space, the space in between. I just talked a bunch about that in my recent podcast episode, but you definitely feel so human and yet so connected to the mystical. I adore this Hanged Man card. And like I said, some of the cards are kind of a miss for me, but when they hit, they like really hit. And I'm just a huge fan of this deck, and I'm really looking forward to when the Oracle decks finally come in from the Kickstarter. Oh, this crone, I'm going to leave it on this card. It's just so good. Really, really a standout deck for more like mystical and magical workings. Like I said, I keep the Major Arcana cards on my altar, and I'm so glad that I have just the Major Arcana only version with some of those extra cards in addition to this, because I'm one of those people where I don't really like leaving cards out on my altar because I need a complete deck so I can use it. So this has allowed me to do both, and I'm just like, tickles my fancy. I'm so happy about it. All right, 2 honorable mentions. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I just did an entire review on this, but this is the Tarot of Vampires, not by Ian Daniels, because that's definitely a standout deck always, but this is by Charles Harrington. and Craig Maher. And this deck has been so much fun. These are the backs. Again, like I said in my other decks that stood out for 2023, this deck very much builds its own world. It has that real life yet mystical feeling to it. The guidebook in this is good. It could be better, but it's good. It definitely weaves all of the story threads together. It has some really interesting takes on some of the RWS cards, but doesn't stray too far away from them. This is one of those decks where it's like, it's very surface level. It's very like beginner friendly, very just like everyday use RWS. But if you do want to go deeper with it, if you do want to take it to the next level, those layers are there for you within the story, within the symbolism, and you can really actually spend time going deep with this deck if you choose to, if you use a little bit of your imagination and kind of fill in the blanks with the stories. It's also just a really great regular RWS deck. So that was an honorable mention, Tarot of Vampires. Again, I have a full review that I did recently on this deck, so I'll leave that linked for you. And I did say some things about the guidebook and the creator and stuff, and that, nothing like bad, but just like sharing my thoughts. And in one of the comments, someone had shared some extra resources from the author that they had shared, so definitely check out the comment section if you're interested in that video. And then last but not least, another honorable mention. This is the Witch's Moon Magic Oracle cards. This, I put in an honorable mention instead of my top 5, mostly because I feel like this is a very special use case deck. Like, I don't use this. This is not like an everyday deck. This is very much like, again, you see a theme here. I think most of the decks that I showed you had the title witch in them. Or implications of witch, and this is no exception. This is very much deep, dark, and mysterious, and witchy. So these are the backs. It comes with silver gilding. It comes with quite a few cards, which is sometimes hard to come by these days. This is designed by Kate Osborne, written by Flavia Kate Peters and Barbara Michael John Freebie. Please don't come at me. And this is just, it's mystical. It's very much focused on the witch path. There's images like this where I'm like, holy fuck, I love this deck. And then there's some other images where I'm like, meh. But I feel that this really captures the essence of the cycles of the witch. It's focused on the moon, but you don't have to use it in that way. Some of the titles are like, you know, first quarter moon, waxing gibbous, but it always has a secondary title under it, which is usually what I pay attention to anyway. There are also some chosen kind of deities and creatures to work with in here, but it's just, again, very much all about that cyclical nature, which is very much how I work my magic. Not a huge fan of this, either the lunacy or the picture of the werewolf, but anyway, not every deck is perfect, right? But I really enjoy the mood of this deck. I love the dark transformational nature. I love that even within, because it is a moon deck, like even within the darkness, we have things like clarity, abundance, gratitude, like, and you can either use this as just a regular oracle, or you can really dive into it in the essence of magic. Like, see, it has banishment magic, and the magic of this deck really happens within the guidebook. So it's definitely written by someone who's following a more structured witch's path. I don't feel that they're doesn't have those solitary vibes. It definitely has like the structured witch path vibes, but it has the kind of like an incantation, if you will, the guidance message, and then it talks about like associations, kind of like a little grimoire, which I really appreciate. So it has the phase of the moon, a goddess if it's attached to it, the kind of themes and powers that you can work with within that card, and then gives you a little ritual to do with whatever the theme of the card was. And I really like this deck. I feel like this is the direction that I wish the Seasons of the Witch Oracle kept going in. Can you tell I'm upset about that? I keep mentioning it. But anyway, definitely an honorable mention. And if I had picked a 6th deck, this probably would have made the list over Tarot Vampires. Sorry. But yeah, those were my standout decks for 2024. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I love watching these videos from other people just to see, like, unboxing videos and reviews and are fun and all, but I really like seeing like what people actually used the most and, you know, how that translated into their work and what they like about those decks and things. So I feel like this is a beautiful snapshot of my year, like black and deep blue, like that was my kind of aesthetic, it seemed, for 2023. So really fun. Thank you so much for being here. I'll leave all those things linked below or in cards and things if you want to check them out, such as the other videos and where to find the decks and things. But I hope you have a beautiful rest of 2023 and an amazing new year, and I will see you guys again soon. Take care, guys.